impressed with what man can do. And some of you parents ought to go home and look in your kid's bedroom, and if what you see plastered all over the wall are pictures of sports heroes, think about it carefully. Your kids are being trained to meditate on what man can do. Whoa, he threw the ball through the hoop. Oh, did you see that? Oh, who's going to care in 1,000 years? Who's going to care in 20 years? Does anybody know who won the Super Bowl 10 years ago? Does anybody care? It doesn't matter. All those grown men out there fighting over that one ball, they can all afford to go buy their own. We get all excited over dumb stuff. Who's going to care in 1,000 years? It's been estimated there's enough stars that everybody on earth can own 2 trillion of them to yourself. Go spend some time looking at them. We could talk a long time about the stars. We'll cover more on that on video number 7, about the stars. How do we see the light, billions of light years away? Yeah, we got a long answer on that in video 7. The Bible says, speak to the earth and it shall teach thee. Did you know the earth is like a big magnet? Now, magnets always lose their strength. The earth's magnet has lost 6% of its strength in the last 150 years. The magnet is getting weaker, which means it used to be stronger, which means the earth can't be more than 25,000 years old, because the heat generated from the stronger magnetic field would have destroyed life on earth. That also means carbon dating doesn't work. We'll cover lots more on carbon dating in question answer time video 7. Here's an example though. The lower leg of a mammoth carbon dated 15,000 years old. The skin was 21,000 years old. Talk about a slow birth. One part of a mammoth was 29,000 years old, another part's 44,000. It just doesn't work, folks. We cover lots more on that on video 7. The textbooks will say, well, yes, the magnetic field's getting weaker because it's part of a pattern of reversals. The magnetic field is reversing. This is pure baloney. The magnetic field of the earth is not reversing. There are stronger and weaker magnetism areas, but not reversed. Follow video 6 for that, but that's all part of a theory called Pangea. How many have ever heard of Pangea? They'll say, yes, boys and girls, millions of years ago, all the continents used to fit together. Oh, really? They don't tell the kids they shrank Africa nearly 40% to make them fit. They also don't tell them they took out all of Mexico and Central America. Hey, señor, ¿qué pasa? ¿Dónde está Mexico? Panama, Costa Rica, Guatemala. They also don't tell them what I think ought to be obvious to a kindergartner. If you take the water out of the oceans, you will notice there is dirt underneath. People say, hey, Hovind, do you think the continents were ever connected? I say, what are you talking about? They still are. What do you mean, were they? Hello, it's not hollow under the oceans, you know. They're still connected. Yeah, it's just the low places are full of water, that's all. What a dumb theory. We cover more on that on video 6. I think the continents are moving some, no question. Okay, I like Walt Brown's hydroplate theory myself. I think that explains the whole thing. We cover that more on video 6. Okay, the earth is spinning about 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, but the earth is slowing down. The earth slows down enough that every once in a while they have to add a tick to the clock to put the clocks back on schedule. New Year's Eve, 1990, they said we have to add a tick to the clock because the clocks are off by a second because the earth is slowing down. They said the earth slows down 1,000th of a second every day. 1992, they did it again. Astronomy magazine said Earth's rotation is slowing down. June is going to be 1 second longer than normal. We're going to have a leap second. Now, most people have heard of leap year, but many people have never even heard of leap second, even though we have one every year to year and a half. We have to have a leap second because the earth is slowing down and you're putting the clocks back on schedule. Now, kids, this is going to be complicated, so listen carefully. The earth is spinning, but it is slowing down. How many can figure this out? Okay? Which means it used to be going faster. How many can figure that out? Okay. Now, if you go back 6,000 years, this is not a problem. The earth was spinning a little faster when Adam was here. He wouldn't notice. He didn't have a watch anyway, as far as we know. But some of these guys would like me to believe everything is billions of years old. Ooh, now you go back a few billion years, the earth was spinning real fast. Your days and nights would be pretty quick. Get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed. You'd never get nothing done. Centrifugal force would have been enormous. The winds would have been 5,000 miles an hour from the Coriolis effect. And you think the dinosaurs lived 200 million years ago? Ooh, man, I know what happened to them. They got blown off. No, they did not live 200 million years ago. Sahara Desert has what's called a prevailing wind pattern. The wind almost always blows the same direction. This creates a problem. The hot air coming off the desert kills the trees next door, and that area becomes desert. And once that soil gets sterilized, it's real hard to bring it back. The process is called desertification. They did quite a study on Sahara because they know it's growing about 4 miles a year today. After studying Sahara for a long time, they said, we think that desert's about 4,000 years old. That's pretty old. But I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger desert someplace? Why is the biggest desert in the world less than 4,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that desert. Now here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. And it's pretty hard to have a desert under a flood. So the desert couldn't start growing until the flood water went down. Psalm 104, the mountains arose, the valleys sank down, the water rushed off. And so I predict, based on the Bible, the biggest desert in the world will be less than 4,400 years old. It is. Wow. Maybe the Bible's right. Did you know when they drill into the ground, sometimes they hit oil? The oil often is under incredible pressure, up to 20,000 pounds per square inch. It'll come squirting up out of the ground, poof, like a big zip. 20,000 psi. The guys who study the rocks on top of the oil say the pressure of the oil is greater than the weight of overbearing rock, which really creates a problem. It should have cracked the rock in less than 10,000 years. Okay, well then I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why is the oil pressure down there still? And where'd the oil come from anyway? Well, nearly all scientists agree that oil comes from organisms that are squished. They're changed by heat and pressure into oil. Years ago, they learned how to make a barrel of oil in 20 minutes in the laboratory from a ton of garbage. They learned that 30 years ago. In Australia, they're taking sewage sludge and changing it to oil in 30 minutes. Sinclair has the dinosaur as their logo. They say the dinosaur has turned to oil. Yes, boys and girls, it mellowed for 80 million years. I don't think so. I have a theory about the oil. Now, here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. Now, in that flood, lots of critters and people drowned. They got buried by the gravel and the rocks and the mud and the sand. It got pretty heavy on top, and it squished them into oil. So the oil's down there from the people and animals that drowned in the flood. Which means, if you stop and think about that, you drove over here today on some of your ancestors. Next time you're at the gas station pumping them in there, you can say, bye, Grandpa. You should have listened to Noah. He told you it was going to rain. It did too, didn't it? I was preaching in Denver one time, and some guys came to the meeting, and they said, now, Hovind, we know you teach the earth is millions, or is 6,000 years old. We'd like to prove to you you're wrong. Come with us, please. They took me to the Denver National Ice Core Laboratory. They've got this freezer, huge freezer, about the size of this auditorium. We walked in there, 36 below zero. I got Florida blood, folks. That was cold. I know for you that's summertime, 36 below. For you Wisconsinites. But, we walked in there, and they said, Mr. Hovind, we go to the South Pole and to Greenland, and we drill holes through the ice. And we save the middle part of the hole. Has to be a government job, you know. And saving ice holes, yeah. We can drill these holes down in the ground, and we save the core sample in this freezer. We would like you to see these core samples. I said, oh, that'd be very interesting. I walked in the freezer. They showed me these core samples, and they said, Hovind, you see these rings on here? I said, yep, I see them. You can see them very clearly. They said, what happens in the summer, the snow melts a little bit, and then it refreezes and makes clear ice. But in the winter, the snow packs, and it traps the air bubbles, and it makes white ice. So these rings, clear, it shows up dark here, you know, dark, light, represent summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter. They said, now the deepest hole we ever drilled is 10,000 feet. And you can count the rings, 135,000 of the annual rings. Now, why do you go around teaching people the earth is only 6,000 years old? I said, fellas, aren't you assuming those are annual rings? So they didn't know about the lost squadron, apparently, but some airplanes ran out of gas during World War II. It hit a storm, had turned back. They crash-landed in Greenland. A rich guy from Kentucky got a brilliant idea to go get those airplanes off the ice. How many have ever heard of the lost squadron before? In 1990, they went looking for those airplanes. They found them using ground-penetrating radar because they were 263 feet below the surface since World War II. They found them using a radar machine and they located a P-38 and they melted a hole down to get to it. As they melted the hole down,